Karen Whitmore stood in her driveway at 6:47 a.m., measuring the Hendersons' mailbox with a ruler while wearing her terry cloth bathrobe and fuzzy slippers. The mailbox was exactly 3/4 of an inch too tall, according to Meadowbrook Estates' HOA Regulation 14.7c, and she had the documentation to prove it. "Excuse me, ma'am, we need you to move your vehicle immediately," a paramedic called out, his voice strained with urgency. Karen looked up from her ruler to see an ambulance blocked behind her Honda Civic, which she'd strategically parked across the narrow street while conducting her mailbox inspection. Red and blue lights painted the morning air, but Karen's expression remained unmoved. "I'm sorry, but this is a scheduled HOA compliance check," she replied, adjusting her reading glasses. "You'll need to find an alternate route. Perhaps Elm Street." "Ma'am, there's a medical emergency. Mr. Patterson is having a heart attack 3 houses down. Every second counts." Karen glanced at her watch, a gift from the HOA board, where she'd been elected compliance officer for the 3rd consecutive year. Regulation 8.2 clearly states that emergency vehicles must use designated routes. This street isn't wide enough for proper emergency access, which is exactly why I've been pushing for parking restrictions. The paramedic's partner jogged up, sweat beading on his forehead. "Lady, move the damn car. A man is dying." "Language," Karen tutted, finally closing her measuring tape with a sharp snap. "And I'll have you know that proper protocol exists for a reason. If Mr. Patterson had followed HOA guidelines about maintaining his health insurance documentation on file, we could have avoided this situation entirely." What Karen didn't know was that Mr. Patterson's wife, Sarah, was frantically recording everything from her bedroom window on her phone. The footage would later go viral with the caption "HOA Karen versus Human Decency." But that was still hours away from changing Karen's life forever. "I'm calling the police," the first paramedic said, grabbing his radio. "Please do," Karen replied, pulling out her own phone to photograph the Hendersons' non-compliant mailbox. "I have Officer Martinez on speed dial. He's very familiar with our community standards." As sirens wailed in the distance, Mr. Patterson's condition deteriorating with each passing moment, Karen remained blissfully unaware that her perfectly ordered world was about to implode. She'd spent 5 years building her reputation as Meadowbrook Estates' most dedicated enforcer, someone who understood that rules existed to protect property values and maintain the community's prestigious image. The irony was that Karen genuinely believed she was helping. In her mind, emergency services should follow proper procedures, just like everyone else. After all, if she started making exceptions now, where would it end? Next thing she knew, people would be parking boats in their driveways and painting their houses unapproved colors. "Ma'am, final warning," the paramedic said, his hand already on Karen's car door handle. Karen stepped protectively in front of her vehicle. "Don't you dare touch private property without authorization." By 9 a.m., Karen's phone had been ringing nonstop. The video from Sarah Patterson, titled "HOA Karen Blocks Ambulance While Man Dies," had been viewed 50,000 times and counting. Karen stared at her phone screen in complete bewilderment, watching herself argue with paramedics while her neighbor's comments flooded in. "This can't be right," she muttered, scrolling through hundreds of angry responses. "They're taking it completely out of context." The HOA emergency board meeting had been called for 10 a.m., 30 minutes earlier than Karen expected. She arrived at the community center to find the parking lot packed with cars and news vans. A reporter thrust a microphone in her face the moment she stepped out of her Honda. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you have any comment about blocking emergency services?" "I was conducting routine compliance checks," Karen replied stiffly, clutching her binder of regulations. The paramedics failed to follow established protocols for emergency vehicle access. "But a man nearly died." "Nearly," Karen emphasized. "Mr. Patterson is fine." The paramedics eventually used the proper route through Elm Street, exactly as I suggested. Inside the community center, Karen faced a firing squad of her fellow board members. President Margaret Chen sat at the head of the table, her usually warm demeanor replaced by ice-cold professionalism. Board members Johnson, Rodriguez and Thompson, people who'd praised Karen's dedication for years, avoided eye contact entirely. Karen, Margaret began. We need to discuss your actions this morning. My actions were entirely within the scope of my duties as compliance officer, Karen said, opening her binder. I have documentation proving that emergency vehicles. Karen, stop. Margaret's voice cut through the room like a blade. A man almost died because you wouldn't move your car. He didn't die though, and technically, Board Member Johnson's face flushed red. Karen, my grandson saw the video. He'd asked me why the mean lady wouldn't let the ambulance help the sick man. How do I explain that? For the first time, Karen felt a flicker of uncertainty. She'd always been praised for her attention to detail, her unwavering commitment to maintaining standards. These same people had elected her, celebrated her, given her awards for her service. I don't understand, Karen said quietly. I've done everything exactly as we discussed. We've talked about parking violations, about emergency access routes, about maintaining community standards. We never told you to block ambulances, Rodriguez said, shaking his head. But the regulations clearly state. Karen, Margaret interrupted. The regulations are guidelines to help our community, not weapons to hurt people. The room fell silent. Karen looked around at faces she'd known for years, people she'd considered friends, colleagues who'd supported her vision of a perfectly ordered neighborhood. Now they stared at her like she was a stranger. I need to think about this, Margaret continued. We will too. Karen, I'm suspending you from your position pending a full review. The words hit Karen like a physical blow. You can't do that. I haven't violated any procedures. You violated human decency, Johnson said quietly. As Karen left the meeting, her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter in college. Mom, you're all over TikTok. What the hell happened? For the first time in years, Karen Whitmore had no regulation to reference, no procedure to follow. She was completely, utterly lost. 3 days later, Karen sat in her pristine living room, surrounded by the detritus of her former life. Resignation letters from every committee she chaired lay scattered across her coffee table. Her phone had been disconnected after the death threats started pouring in. The local news had moved on to other stories, but the internet's memory was longer and less forgiving. A soft knock at her door made her freeze. Through the peephole, she saw Sarah Patterson holding a casserole dish. I know you're in there, Karen, Sarah called gently. I brought dinner. Against her better judgment, Karen opened the door. Sarah looked exhausted but not angry, which somehow made everything worse. How is he? Karen asked quietly. Alive. No thanks to you. Sarah's words were matter of fact, not cruel. Can I come in? They sat in Karen's perfect living room, every throw pillow precisely positioned, every surface dust-free, and ate tuna casserole in silence. Finally, Sarah spoke. Do you know why I recorded you? Karen shook her head. Because I was terrified. My husband was dying, and this woman in a bathrobe was arguing about mailbox heights while he turned blue. I thought if I filmed it, someone would have to help us. I was trying to help, Karen said weakly. The regulations exist for reasons. If emergency vehicles can't access properties properly. Karen, stop. Sarah's voice was tired, but not unkind. Do you hear yourself? You're still talking about regulations while my husband almost died. The truth hit Karen like a sledgehammer. For 5 years, she'd been so focused on rules and procedures that she'd forgotten why communities existed in the first place. She'd become so invested in being right that she'd lost sight of being good. I don't know how to be different, Karen admitted, tears finally coming. This is who I've been for so long. Sarah studied her for a long moment. My husband wants to press charges. The HOA is talking about a restraining order. The whole neighborhood thinks you're a monster. Karen nodded, expecting nothing less. But I told them I wanted to talk to you first, Sarah continued. Because I think you're not a monster. I think you're just lost. The next morning, Karen found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with neat handwriting. Mrs. Whitmore, I heard what happened. I'm sorry people are being mean to you. My mom says you made a mistake, but that doesn't make you a bad person. I hope you feel better. Emma Patterson, age 9. Karen clutched the letter to her chest and made a decision. She couldn't undo what she'd done, but maybe she could learn to be better. The question was whether Meadowbrook Estates would ever give her that chance. As she looked out her window at the neighborhood she tried so hard to perfect, Karen noticed something she'd missed before. Mrs. Chen's garden gnome was 6 inches too close to the property line, according to Regulation 12.4a. For the first time in 5 years, Karen Whitmore didn't reach for her measuring tape.